Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and welcome to this week's episode of In Therapy, where we follow real-life people on their therapeutic journeys. In this week's episode, we're exploring how the state of our nervous system directly impacts on our intimate relationships. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, click the bell icon to be notified as new episodes are released, and do follow my Instagram at Alex Howard Therapy for daily inspiration and support. 41-year-old Al has come to In Therapy to work on a range of issues, predominantly health anxiety. Last time we delved into how to spot the signs of a jacked up nervous system, the dangers of overcommitting, and how to make habits stick. I gave him the homework of factoring in time for regular exercise, meditation, and working through the reset program. So Al, it's good to see you.
You too.
How have you been doing since last time?
Not great. Yeah, I mean it's been a mixed bag as always, but because it's been just over 2 weeks, I think, since I saw you last. So I've failed on some scores and succeeded on some scores. So I did a good number of meditations.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't watch the third module. I watched about the first quarter of it. So I need to do that still. I've been flat and cat sitting at a flat in Canary Wharf for a friend of my dad's wife because she's away for a whole month, and also so it's good for her, but it also allows me to get out of my situation.
Okay.
While I look for somewhere else to move to.
So you are going to move?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's the other thing. I decided that I'm definitely going to move again.
Because of the dynamic with the flatmate, or because of the flat, or
it's because of the flat, really. Like, because we can't really happily cohabit there.
Because the walls are too thin and it's not spacious enough.
Yeah,
okay.
It really is. And it just became very obvious that it was not going to work, because I think I came back to stay there for one night, and my housemate was just up watching TV right up until 11, and I was like, I really just need to recharge and get an early night. And yeah, so through the process of that, she was just like, yeah, okay, but I maybe this isn't going to work out, and if I can't even watch TV, after at 10 o'clock in my own flat, there's a problem. And I was like, yeah, I think you're right. And
yeah, I get it. It's tricky on both sides.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I'm looking at places to live alone potentially, but then budget is tough. So yeah, I don't know. And then amongst all of that, I was it looked like I was going to embark on a bit of a relationship with somebody, and that all broke down last night. So
what can you share some of what happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit messy because we sort of got together a couple of months back and had some dates, and it was good, but I kind of had my doubts about it, so I ended it. And then some time passed, and we met up just sort of as friends, but there was sort of undeniable chemistry still there, and so we kind of got together again. And then it sort of had a sort of different quality. It felt good, and I was trying to sort of talk myself into not freaking out about it and just give it,
Not freaking out about what?
Well, just getting to one of my issues is I'll get together with someone and I'll get too far into myself. I'll start thinking, oh, if I'm not 150% sure about this person right now, then it's wrong. Or
so you put too much pressure on it too quickly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, without a doubt. So I was able to sort of counteract that for once, and and we went to Bath for a weekend away together, and that was really nice, and we had a great time. But then in the last sort of 4 or 5 days, it just sort of started to unravel, and she's had a very tough life to date, and this seems to be my role as a man. I'll meet a woman who's just been fucked over by like one or two guys, and therefore needs for me to just be a saint and not get upset about anything or get annoyed about anything. And if I do, it's like, oh, you were just like my ex, da 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 da. So
it's kind of a burden to carry, right?
Yeah, and it's just not realistic. It's like, she was like, look, my work life is like super stressful, and when I'm at work, I'm very organized, but in my spare time, my private life, I want to be just relaxed. So I don't want to have to worry about, because I've got this thing about time and being on time, right? If I arrange to meet somebody, I'm on time, like basically always. I know stuff happens, people get delayed because of stuff beyond their control. That's whatever, that's fine. But and I wear a watch, and I sort of calculate how long my journeys are going to take me, and I calculate how long tasks are going to take me. And so she just started to sort of pick up on these things, and it made me feel like she was painting me out to be this sort of super uptight character, whereas I don't feel like an uptight character. I'm just like, I'm methodical and I'm organized, and that's how I navigate my life, and that's how I sort of keep some sort of control over my life.
Right. Which is also probably part of a strategy to feel less anxious in a sense, because I'm sure the sequence and the order, and this is happening there, and you can orient yourself to your life by having that sense of control around it.
Yeah, definitely. Whereas to her, this is like a sort of, I don't know, like a hassle, or like a making her feel kind of anxious and making her feel like she can't be relaxed or comfortable around me.
And is that a theme that you've had come up in other relationships, or was that more?
Not that. The other thing that she sort of said about me was that I'm too intense, and I'm too I can get too sensitive or too upset about things, and that I have had before. So I've come away from it feeling like it's me. I can't be in a relationship with anyone because I do keep getting told some of these same things. Therefore, it's my problem, So that's quite hard to deal with.
Do you think some of those things are true?
Yeah, they are. I think they are. And what I'm not clear on is whether it's a problem or whether that just is a sort of incompatibility thing.
Yeah. Maybe it's a bit of both.
Or both, maybe, yeah. But my mother was a very volatile woman. She was very neurotic, and she was like, if you did something to annoy her or offend her, she could hold a grudge for days. Yes. That kind of character. And she could, like, if you said the wrong thing, she could like fly off the handle very quickly. So I think that's, again, that's where it's come from. And I feel when I go through these things where I'm like, oh God, I've messed another thing up, and I've pushed someone away because I just can't control this thing, So that's, sort of self-flagellating.
Yeah.
I'm going to be on my own forever because of this, basically.
So there's a whole, what I call inner critic attack that then comes in, that it almost gets weaponized against you, and that becomes ammunition to beat yourself up with.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, part of the challenge is the common denominator in all of our relationships is us.
Yeah.
And so when there are repetitive themes that come up, that is a valuable mirror to go, okay, well, what is it that I need to work on? And certain issues with one person may be really incompatible and cause a lot of kind of friction. And with someone else, they could feel much safer and happier with that. For example, kind of tightness around this needs. So there is a compatibility piece, it sounds like, but there is also, in a sense, the parts of yourself that you struggle with. It sounds like some of the time they're also a struggle for other people to be with, which is all of the more incentive and reason to work on those elements. In a sense. It sounds like you have a tendency, that analytical anxiety mind where you go round and round and round on something. It sounds like you have a tendency early on in a relationship to do that about the relationship, which probably does cause you to want to run away sometimes because it's too intense. It might push them away sometimes. It probably makes you more emotionally volatile sometimes as well, because something relatively small happens. It's like, oh my God, this relationship's never going to work. And there's a kind of over reactivity perhaps that probably does come in. Of course, the more that you work on calming and settling your system, it's not just then that your own anxiety becomes calmer, but also your responses probably become more measured as well.
Yeah.
Does that resonate somewhat?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, somewhat. If I ask a question, it's not. I don't mean it critically, but is that your sort of catch-all answer for everything, or is that like, do you know what I mean? Or is that, because I'm just curious because if so, that worries me a bit, because like, you know, I suppose the jury is out for me in terms of not maybe whether I can calm it, but how much by, and, you know, all those sorts of things. So it's
I think often there are common threads and common denominators between people's inner lives. And so if someone has, for example, which is not your pattern, but someone's got a pattern of they explode and they get angry at everyone, that's going to have impacts on their physical body. It's going to have impacts on their intimate relationships, on their family life, on their work life. And there may be different instances or different ways that plays out, but there's a fundamental shared kind of piece that they're too quick to respond. There's a kind of hotness and aggressiveness that comes in. If they calm that down, is that going to fix every issue in all of those areas? No. Is it going to make each of those areas work better? Yes. Same thing's true with anxiety. If you have an ongoing pattern of quite strong anxiety, it's going to have an impact in different areas. Is it a realistic expectation that you're going to be someone that's just like the opposite personality, like completely in the moment, go with the flow, completely relaxed? No. Is that even what you're here to aspire towards? I don't think it is either. It's to work on the sharper edges of the pattern that are causing unhappiness for you in your life. And it's causing unhappiness for you in your inner life, but it's also having, it sounds like, some impacts in your relationship life. And what I didn't hear you describe in that scenario was, I met someone that potentially could have been my life partner and I was really into, and then my anxiety patterns came up and that was the reason why it didn't work out. That wasn't what I heard you say. What I heard you say was that we had some chemistry and that chemistry was strong at times. And there was a incompatibility in our elements of our character, and my anxiety patterns added another element of stickiness, let's say, to some of what was going on.
Yeah. I suppose, it's just, you know, like before, well, so my last sort of significant relationship was just about 10 years ago. And so I suppose every time I sort of nearly get into a relationship, it's like it sort of becomes a self-beating weapon that's like, oh, look, you nearly did it again, but you fucked it up again. And yeah, whilst I wasn't like, you know, it was still early days with this person. She was absolutely lovely, you know. And I am sort of worried that I've pushed away someone who could have been, you know, I don't know. That's the point, I suppose. I just feel it's hard to come away, for me anyway, it's hard to come away from these situations without feeling like it's all my fault.
Well, that sounds like a big part of that is your inner critic is taking the situation and weaponizing it against you. Right. And the truth is, without going into a massive forensic analysis of everything that happened in the relationship, what I'm hearing you describe as something that's probably a 50-50 and an incompatibility. You know, and I don't think that is a value judgment on your value or your worth as a human being. But I hear what you're saying, that it's being used as that by your inner critic. I think also going back to your question around not necessarily believing that that there's a limit to how far you can go with the anxiety piece. I think what I would say is a couple of things. One, you can definitely calm the extremities of that anxiety. And I think hopefully you recognize that to be true. And I want to come in a minute some of the meditation pieces. But I think the other piece, which in some ways is if not more important, at least as important, is a lot of the time at the moment, you're buying the story of your anxiety. What often happens is, like, to take the example I gave of someone getting angry, it isn't necessarily that they no longer, in the resolution or the progress, let's say, in that pattern, they lose the instinct towards anger. They just are not at the mercy of it. So something might happen, they might still have that response, but rather than their mind jumping on it and pouring fuel on the fire and it kind of exploding, it's like they can recognize it, identify it, and then they can let it go somewhat. Same is true of the anxiety. It may not be that the anxiety thoughts necessarily completely stop, but right now a thought comes in that triggers another thought, and then it kind of gets bigger and bigger, and it has a level of momentum which is very hard to not be pulled along by.
Yeah.
And what we're working towards is firstly this calming of the system, but secondly, it not having that same power and momentum. You might have some of the thoughts, but you recognize them for what they are, and you're able to let go of the grip that they have on you. I think that's my observation of what people tend to experience in terms of progress and change.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
How does that sound to you?
Yeah.
Does that feel more believable?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah. Because that's in the moment, thinking back to last night, because it really exploded in a ball of flames, it was like I stormed off the whole works,
Right.
And as soon as I got home, I regretted it. I was like, and I sent her an apology and all the whole thing. But in the moment, I was furious. I was like seeing red. I was like, and I was just again like I described with the health anxiety, I felt completely at the mercy of it, completely gripped by it. Like there was just nothing I could do to sort of. And it's very easy to sort of obsess and think back and and just be like, oh, I could have just not done that,
Well, can you? I'm obviously sensitive to it. It's a personal moment, and it involves someone else's narrative. So I don't want to push you to share things you don't feel comfortable sharing. But I think it would be a helpful exercise for us to deconstruct a little bit, at least of what was happening in you in response, because something clearly was triggered in you. It wasn't just there was a kind of incompatibility and it's not really working. Like something happened, and I think it's helpful to understand that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think back to where it sort of, because it started a few days before in my head. Because I think both of us, because, it had not worked out the first time and both of us were kind of like trying not to get freaked out by it and take it casual, but at the same time, I think it was sort of unspoken that we were seeing each other and weren't seeing other people. And whilst we weren't labeling it a relationship or girlfriend boyfriend, it was certainly not like just super casual or anything.
Yeah, and you had some chemistry.
You
can't. Chemistry's either there or isn't there.
Yeah.
But there's something.
Enjoyed spending time with her, and it was never boring. It was anyway. So then we had talked about going to Edinburgh for a weekend, which she then had to cancel because of I think work commitments. Which was fine, I didn't get upset about that at all. I understand, I'm not like unreasonable. Like, I understood that. But then she also sort of then announced that this was on the phone. She said, and I'm busy Tuesday, busy Wednesday, busy Thursday, busy Friday, busy Saturday, and then maybe Sunday we'll see. And I was like, all right. So we've gone from like potentially going away for a long weekend, Friday to Monday, to nothing, that's a bit odd. Like, I had actually said to some friends that I couldn't do something one night because I thought, I'll be meeting up with her. And how,
and in that moment, because I want to separate two things. There's the logical, rational part of you, and there's the emotional part of you.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in that moment, how you felt emotionally.
Yeah, I mean, it's emotionally, yeah, like a sort of a little boy who's been neglected.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
You didn't feel seen.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's very juvenile. It's very.
But
basic.
let's not judge it as that, because the fact is that's how you felt, and that's the truth of how you felt. That you felt. It sounds like you felt a bit hurt. You felt a bit unseen. You felt perhaps unimportant and uncared about in that.
Yeah, and in the same conversation, I'm not going to say where she's from, but she's not from here.
Yeah,
she was like, and she needed to she's in the process of applying for a kind of visa that will allow her to.
Right.
And she said, "Oh, but if I don't get it, I'll just go home. It's fine." And this was in the same conversation. I was like, all right, okay. And I didn't say anything about any of it at the time. It just all went in.
But it impacted you.
It just it started sort of whirring around in my head. And then we saw each other in person on Sunday. And then she sort of started making all these comments about my timekeeping and like, oh, just relax. And I was like, I'm relaxed. I'm just like to time stuff. It doesn't mean I'm not relaxed, And she told me she had X amount of time to spend with me. And we'd said, well, let's watch a movie. But the amount of time she sort of was left, because we met up, had some lunch first. And then the amount of time left was like an hour. So I was like, oh, well, should we watch like a series or something, like one episode of a comedy or whatever? And she was like, oh, it doesn't matter if we can't finish the movie. Why do you have to finish the movie? And I was like, okay, this is coming from you. This, upset.
Yeah, it sounds like something's happening in her as well.
I wasn't. Yeah. I'm just like, I'm very practical. If I've got a window of time, I think about what will fit that window of time. She's like, yeah, but if it was a good movie, maybe I would just stay longer. And I'm like, yeah, okay. It was just that kind of mismatch of like mentalities where.
So it sounds like there's a mismatch mentalities, maybe also a bit of a cultural mismatch possibly as well.
Yeah.
But there's also, I think what's particularly, because the point of you and I exploring this together is not to try and fix it. And it's not to try and assign or apportion blame to who's right and wrong.
I get it.
Yeah, it's like to understand like what's feeling triggered, right?
Yeah.
So in that moment, it sounds like you felt some frustration. What else were you feeling?
Well, I felt picked on because I was like, yeah, she kept sort of saying these things over the course of it was only like 2 or 3 hours, and it was like, geez, well, if this is such a sort of thing for you, you're not going to enjoy being with me because that's who I am. I'm not apologizing for any of that. That's like, I acknowledge there are parts of me that need working on or are not positive, but that I don't see that as one of them. So then she left, and I'll just finish the story because there's a bit more to in terms of emotional stuff. And over the next couple of days, I sort of felt myself pulling back from it. I was texting her less and being less kind of affectionate, and she picked up on that and like asked me how I was feeling. And so that's when I kind of let her have it with both barrels, but not. Trouble is, it was over text, and I didn't.
It's always a bit dangerous.
Yeah, and I didn't actually. I wasn't sat there fuming and doing that. I actually thought about it quite calmly and rationally, and I just wrote her a long message saying, "I feel a bit sad because of these things." And also felt like, whilst we were together, I felt like she didn't really. She would ask me how I was or ask about my nephew, but she wouldn't really delve very more deeply. Like I'd say, oh, he's doing much better, thanks. And then we'd just talk about her and her day, and she'd go into minute detail about all of her stuff. But to her, she didn't want to push me because she felt it was something heavy, so she didn't. But for me, I need somebody to push me because I'm not a natural talker in a relationship. I'm not like blah, 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 blah. I've never particularly enjoyed talking in general. I hate talking on the phone. So anyway, like, again, I felt like a bit of sort of slight neglect or just that she didn't care enough. And then we met up last night to talk, to see if we could sort of talk this through, because she got very upset that I had said that she doesn't ask me about me enough and doesn't really listen. And so we met up and she was half an hour late. And I was like, I just don't get it. Like, how is it? And then she said, oh, she was texting me on the way. She was like, do you know what? Maybe I won't come. Like, if you're being so mean. It's like, okay, so you're half an hour late and I'm not allowed to even be upset about this. And I'm not even allowed to express it. Otherwise you'll threaten to like not come. How is that okay? You know? But I just couldn't say, I could see couldn't even say that to her because she would have just been like, oh, you're so uptight. It's like, you know, at that point it was like clear. It just was like probably not going to work.
Yeah.
You know, and then we got a bit drunk and then, you know, started sort of like kissing again. And then it's nearly finished. But like, and then something came up about my mother because like she had also lost one of her parents. And she was talking about how she has had a hard life and she just wants, you know, in her spare time, and like I was saying, she wants a guy who's just free and easy. And like, I was like, I'm not that guy. You know, if I'm with someone, I want attention. I want them to show me they care. And like, I don't want you to be able to just meet me half an hour late just because you don't want to be on time. You know, I deserve more respect than that, you know, and I respect you because I was here on time, you know. And then I thought she said something about my mother at some stage. And I got, because I was saying, oh, you know, we've all had hard lives. Like I lost my mum 20 years ago. And I thought she had said something about why should I be upset about that? Because she had been controlling and bossy. And I just lost it. I was like,
say that again.
I thought she had said, oh, why you shouldn't have been upset about losing your mother because she was such a controlling figure over you. She didn't say that, but
that's what you heard.
Somehow that's what I heard. And I got my coat and I was like, I'm leaving. So we ended up outside the pub and we were like shouting at each other. And like, I grabbed her wrist and she was like, did you just grab my wrist? You know, like I was going to hit her or something. And I'm afraid I said, get fucked. And I walked home, which is terrible. Like, it's awful. And I got home and like I said, I felt terrible about it. And I sent her a long message and I was like, I'm so sorry that if that was the last thing I ever said to you, like, I want to send you this message to say, you know, I'm sorry. And I didn't mean any of that. And, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then I just didn't sleep at all last night.
How do you feel talking about it now?
Horrible. Like, I feel all day I felt just sad, you know, because it's sad because it's like you said, looking at it sort of analytically, it probably wouldn't work, probably couldn't work because of the two different sort of mentalities or cultural differences. And that's sad because like, I liked so many things about her and like, it's just been the longest time since I've had anyone in my life. And it's like, oh, again, because like even back 10 years ago, that situation was kind of doomed before it even began. So
well, I think also what is not sitting well with you, I think that's definitely part of it. And I think also you don't feel that you behaved in a way that represents your true character in a sense.
Yeah, it was the me that gets triggered was behaving, was acting.
Yeah, you acted out in a sense.
Which, yeah, it was just a disaster. Like all I needed to have done was to just clarify, like, sorry, did you just say that about my mother before flying off the handle?
Yeah,
you know.
But I think it's helpful exploring it in the slightly wider context that we are as well, like in terms of the sequence of what happened, because you were already feeling triggered before you even met her last night, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And in a sense, it's like, you know, I talk about, it's normally a slightly different context, like an emotional black sack of all the stuff in our lives that we don't deal with and process, and it all gets thrown in the sack, and then at some point the lid comes off and it explodes out. And if we put that in the kind of microcosm of this relationship, there's a sequence of things that had happened that you were feeling unseen, feeling a bit angry, frustrated, disconnected, and all of that sort of gone in. And then something happened that she says something, and then suddenly the whole lot comes out. And it's not about any one moment; it's the sequence in a sense of those moments.
Yeah.
And I think we also have to factor in as well. There is a strong part of you which longs to be in a loving relationship, and that part of you had some taste of some moments of that, and so feels a bit more open. But B, almost like is kind of longing of that. It's sort of like going to a restaurant really hungry and having the first half of a really good starter and then being told the restaurant's closed, and like it's like you've just started to get a taste that actually makes it harder in a sense. So I think there's all of that's also there in the mix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but it's very painful. Yeah, and it's like, there's a big part of me that wants to sort of keep fighting for it and try to sort of meet her again and be like, look, I've realized all these things about myself that I need to work on and change, and like, can we give it another go? But that's probably a bad idea.
Well, I don't. In a sense, I don't know enough about you. I mean, I'm still learning you, and I know very little about her. Whatever happens, even if this is the end of it, one of the gifts that you take from it is the opportunity to discover these things about yourself, to work on them, to do them differently.
Yeah,
and who knows what that means in terms of how it goes forward. I mean, sometimes the flip side of chemistry is also sparks flying in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And I think that's also part of what you're experiencing here. When there isn't any chemistry, there tends a bit like take it or leave it, there isn't any sparks. And there's different types of relationships. Sometimes we can be in a very loving, sweet, wonderful relationship that doesn't have lots of sparks. And that's also okay. But clearly the fact that you could trigger, because she was also triggered by the sounds of it, the fact that you could trigger each other so much is sort of, it's a good side and a bad side to that in a sense.
Yeah.
What I think is particularly important is what you make this mean, because at the moment it sounds like part of the meaning is I'm just really bad at relationships and I always screw it up, and it's taken 10 years to even get this far with someone. And I think that that's a very unhelpful frame and meaning to put around it.
Yeah.
As we talk about it together, and we've only spent so much time on it, but we begin to unpack it a bit. In this moment, what meaning do you give it?
Give the fact that it didn't work, or
like how do you make sense of what happened? Because there's like your inner critic story, but I'm interested particularly in as you're thinking about it and reflecting on it and having talked it through a bit, how do you make sense of what happens?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like you said, I think it's a combination of all of those things. So it's a combination of my knee-jerk triggered reactions, and a combination of us being just too different as people. And there's also like it brings up the fear of like that the narrative of like, oh, that was your last chance. You'll never find anyone again. You'll never find anyone as good, or you'll never get that great feeling that chemistry that you had. So there's lots of fear around it, whereas if I was able to just have the faith that if someone could say to me, it's a bit like with the health anxiety. It's like if I when I'm going through something, I need someone to show me definitive proof that there's nothing sinister going on. It's like this: if someone could show me proof that, look, you're going to meet someone. Look, here's you in the future with them.
Or even that it's going to be with this person. You're just going to have to go through these stages of challenge together, and then it's going to be worth it. That would also probably shift. Hey, not that I'm saying that's the case, because I don't know. But
whereas now I feel like I'm staring down the barrel of one of my biggest fears is like ending up just alone. So that's every time I think when these things go wrong, it's a real feeling of like cold desolation. Just like just like tumbleweed, kind of being in a cold sort of house on my own. That's the sort of imagery. So that's what I'm feeling.
Yes.
Now.
Yes. And what I also hear is there's this quite young place in you, like when we all have it, but this little boy that really wants to be seen and wants to be loved and wants to be cared for, that felt quite vulnerable and quite exposed in this dynamic. And then when it felt too vulnerable, or he wasn't being attended to in the way that he needed, this quite vicious and strong response of kind of pushing away in a sense. It's like, so it's like almost energetically, it's like needing kind of come in, and then it's like, oh, it doesn't feel good. Right.
Yeah.
Get away. And is that something that feels like a familiar theme for you?
Yeah. There's definitely a side of me that comes out when I'm in a relationship, which I really don't like, which is like, if my will isn't being met, I get like childish, I get like,
right.
Yeah. Like a kid who doesn't get a toy, and I think as the older I get, the more I'm aware of it, the more I'm able to counteract it and challenge it, and not just let that take over. But I still lose the battle a lot more than I would want to.
Can you say a bit more about what that place in you wants and feels?
Well, like you were saying, I think it's just wants to be like, I feel like I want that other person in my life, a partner, girlfriend, or whatever, to make me a priority, because I feel like from my side, that's what I do. So a part of me expects it returned. I think that's why, because I'm very much, I can definitely, I take a while to get there. Like particularly if I'm not totally sure about the person at first, but if I get to that point, like I'm, 100% in it, and I'm like, want them to meet my friends, want them to meet my family, the whole works. But so I'm a weird paradox, because I'm quite, like I say, it's not often I get there with someone, but when I do, I'm like all in. And so I guess I start to feel, if that's not being given back, that's when it starts to, I feel that sort of child rearing its head and being like, that's not fair. It's like, it's not fair.
Right.
That's the sentiment.
I think that's the piece that's really important to see.
Yeah.
Right. There's a place in you which is like, it's not fair.
Yeah.
It's not right. It's not fair.
Yeah.
How about me? How about what, I've done this. How about what I'm going to get back?
Yeah. Which doesn't seem to me a healthy way to be in an adult relationship,
Well, it's not healthy for that place to be running the show.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it probably is running the show a bit more than we want it to.
Yeah.
The question is why. It's not, the way to address it is not to shame that part of you or to judge that part of you. It's to really understand. Like, can you think about other places in your life where that feeling like it's not fair is?
I mean, I felt like that sometimes just about myself and about why I have the problems I have, or, why can't I sleep? Like, why do I have such bad problems with sleep? That's not fair. Why do I have such mental anguish sometimes with whatever anxiety or health anxiety? Maybe I've got some latent frustrations. I wouldn't say it's not fair though. It's like frustrations around, because in my 20s I wanted to be a rock star, and I wanted to make it in a band, and or if not in a band, maybe as an actor or something, because I love performing. So it's like there's a part of me that, in that regard, that is permanently unfulfilled and frustrated, and thinks, and everyone I'm sure thinks this, like, I never thought at 41 I'd be doing this and that and living here, and or at 41 I wouldn't have this or wouldn't have that. So in those areas, I'd say.
How about a younger you? How about you as a younger boy, as a teenager, that it's not fair place?
What do you mean?
Well, it feels like that there's a narrative that fits in your adult life, which is there are things that you wanted that didn't quite happen the way that you wanted them to happen. But also this place feels like quite a young place in you.
Yeah.
And I wonder about if you have memory of being, a little boy, or being in your early teens or your later teens of like, not feeling fair.
Oh, I mean, I've mentioned it before. I think they're getting bullied for 2 years.
Right.
Yeah, that's definitely. And and I felt a lot of that kind of feeling at home as well, because my mother forced me to practice the violin every day.
Yeah.
So it was like, not only was like I was at boarding school, so when I was at boarding school I'd get bullied and teased, and then when I came home, not only did I not get to just goof off and relax, I had to.
You got bullied.
I got bullied in another way, by my own parent, and have been forced to do this thing for an hour every day that I didn't enjoy doing.
Yeah,
and it made me dread the entire day running up to that happening, to sort of get it out of the way.
Yeah. Because what I'm hearing is that there's and I use these words recognizing this is not a judgment of you or unique to you. We all have this in our own ways, but this needy, slightly angry place that wants something, that needs something, that longs for something, that isn't getting it, and is quite volatile in response, of like, it's almost like a very exposed and sensitive wound, and if someone even touches it, it can very quickly kind of trigger a strong response.
Yeah makes sense. And I think it's also partly due to the fact that the way I observed and witnessed my mother reacting to things that she didn't get. And
right.
She was frustrated herself. She was an actress, and she got a scholarship to RADA when she was 17.
Oh, wow.
Was in the same class as Sean Connery. And
wow.
She was on her way up and then had a family. And then,
So was there a place of also, although I'm sure she very much loved her family, a place of also part of her resented her family because it had become an obstacle to fulfilling that dream?
Yeah, I don't know if it was as strong as resenting her family, but she never got over it, I don't think. And she was always, she had a permanent sort of sadness around that. And
it's not an either or, right? It's like she can have loved her family and had a place in her that the two things aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah. I think probably that's true. Yeah. So she had her own set of frustrations and difficulties that she had to deal with on a regular basis, and having to be a housewife and a mother, and drudgery, domesticity, and instead of
particularly at a time where you couldn't have both as well.
Yeah, and particularly as my dad, his work involved him being abroad for weeks at a time.
Right. So she really couldn't have both.
She really couldn't. Yeah. So really, she made that sacrifice. But, in many ways, she made people around her pay for that.
Yes.
And I'm sure
and she made you pay for it as well.
And I'm sure some of the issues I struggle with now stem from that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's right. And it's how I tend to look at things like this is there's a few different levels to it, because there is the logical, rational level of, and that's part of, us talking about it is hopefully helpful somewhat, of having more awareness of what's happening. Because sometimes just the awareness alone, we can see ourselves, hang on, I know I'm the path I'm about to go down, and we can step off that path because we can see the pattern.
Yeah.
But also there is a wound, like there is an unhealed wound in you, which is a part of you which feels unseen, unheld, unloved, frustrated. And that wound is near the surface, and when it gets touched, there's a response that's not so much about that moment, but about all the other moments that are being triggered by that wound being touched.
Yeah.
And so healing some of that wound should also then reduce some of that sensitivity and reactivity.
Yeah.
How is it for you just talking about it in the way that we are?
Yeah, I mean, it's painful, but it's good because I suppose some of these things I hadn't realized and hadn't linked, back. And there's other things that sort of keep coming back to me about, like I remember I was dating this girl once who was a smoker, and I hate smoking, and she knew that, and she was. She was trying to sort of give up for me, which is never the worst reason to give up. Never going to end well. But as a result of the fact that she sort of, I knew she was doing that, and she had sort of assured me that she would do that. Then on the occasion I'd see her I'd really blow up. This was a long time ago now, but
because she loved the cigarette more than you in that moment.
Exactly. It was like, you are choosing the cigarette over me.
Yeah.
It's not that I want to tell you what to do and you must do what I say. It's much deeper than that.
Yes.
It's like you're abandoning me by smoking that cigarette,
Which is a great example of that wound again. Being, there's a point where that on a rational level or on a kind of non-emotive level, it would be annoying and irritating.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it was painful.
No, it meant a lot
you.
more.
Yeah, it was painful because that wound was being rubbed.
Yeah. 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 So how do I heal that wound? That's the question.
Well, there are different elements to it. Part of it is just, in a sense, recognizing that wound is there. Like, you can't heal what you don't feel. And so what often happens is we develop these different strategies to avoid the wound and to sort of cover it up. And a level of the reactivity is actually a way of trying to protect the wound. So it's like when you start to feel that painful place, you push away or you respond in a quite harsh manner, because actually that's a strategy to try and protect the pain that's there. So there's more to it than this, but part of it is actually letting yourself feel the wound. So rather than trying to get away from it, to avoid it, to reject it, it's actually to allow yourself to feel the pain that's there. Because there's a big difference between feeling that wound as an adult and feeling that wound as a little boy. Because if you think about it, the little boy who was there at boarding school, for example, that was being bullied, wanted to be seen and be loved, and then got home from being at boarding school and just wanted to be able to goof around and be loved and be free, was then being forced to practice the violin an hour a day. He wasn't able to really feel those feelings. He had to find ways to deal with it. In fact, if you'd been at boarding school and you just let yourself feel that sadness, you would have been bullied even more. If you'd been at home and you'd shown that weakness, it sounds like you're part of your mum's, and obviously one has to be careful not to analyze someone that's not even in the room, but my sense of probably your mum had a big wound about having abandoned her own dream. And so she dealt with that by trying to control you more, control the environment more. It sounds like she projected some of that onto her own anxiety, and that was a sort of a distraction of her own emotional life. So there was no holding and support for you just to feel the sadness and to feel the upset and to feel the hurt. The difference is, as an adult, we can be there for ourselves. As a child, we need someone else to do that. As an adult, we can learn to be. So at least the beginning part of it is you starting to make more space for those feelings, talking about those feelings in this context as part of it, giving more time and space. It's also why the meditation helps, because the meditation moves us from being kind of stimulated up in our mind to being more grounded and more connected to our body.
Yeah.
When I talk about getting closer to rather than further away to that wound, how do you react to that?
Fine. I mean, it's just more, I guess, keen to know how to do that. I mean, anything that's going to help heal it is interesting to me.
So we will absolutely come to that. There's a certain sequence of how I tend to do things, which is often important. The reason being is to really be able to be connected to and present to the feelings that are there, we need to have a certain amount of ability to direct our mind. And otherwise what happens is we get to it and then our mind jumps off to this and to that. And that's why meditation is particularly helpful, because it just allows us to, does a number of things. One of the things it allows us to do is to follow the track and stay present with what we're feeling, as opposed to going into what we think about what we're feeling. How you mentioned briefly that you managed to do a few meditations. How was that for you?
Yeah, it was good. Every time is a bit different, I guess. Some days it's very difficult and I'm just sort of distracted the entire time. Other days I have that feeling like I talked about before. It's like a relief.
Yes.
I generally been doing it sort of, like you said, sort of after breakfast before starting work.
Yeah, great.
I'm aware it's far too early days to sort of expect to see much result from that. So I'm trying not to.
Yeah. So it sounds like you feel happy to continue going with the path you're on with the meditation.
Yeah.
So what I'd like you to do is to continue with that, get through module 3, and if you can, get through module 4 as well. I want to get into more of the strategies for working with your mind. I think it was really that I found it very helpful today to go down the path a bit more of some of the emotions, some of the reactions. I think it gives us more context and frame around what's happening. We will then, in time, as we spent a bit of time initially working on calming things, then get more into some of the emotional reactions and sensitivities that are there. Because I think healing that place, I think, is important. Because I think it's almost like the more sensitive those places are, the more defense we have to put around, not because we're being defensive, because we're being defensive. We're trying to protect we're trying to protect that place. And it, in a sense, it's a bit of a cheesy thing to say, but intimacy is into me see. And if we've got those places in us which are really delicate and really sensitive and easily triggered, we're going to try and keep people at a distance, because if they get too close and they touch that place, it hurts.
Yeah.
The more we can work on healing that sensitivity, the easier it then becomes to let people come close to you, because there isn't this open wound that's easily touched.
Yeah.
Any questions you've got?
Nope.
Okay. Good. Well, it's good to see you, and I'll see you in a few weeks.
Yep. Cheers.
Good. I hope you found this week's episode of In Therapy helpful. I really think it does serve as a reminder that calming our nervous system and really cultivating a healing state in our body is not just about our own personal well-being and health and our own emotional well-being. It also directly impacts on our relationships with other people. If we meet relationship from a place where our nervous system is wired and jacked up, we're not going to be able to connect. We're not going to be responding to what's really in front of us. We're responding from a place of already being triggered and being reactive. So I'm curious to hear from you. What do you notice helps you maintain being in a healing state around other people? What helps you stay in a place of being connected with yourself? One of the things that I find in my life is the importance of my practices, of really constantly working to train my system, which then means in those moments that are challenging, we're able to maintain that state of calmness. Please do share your experiences in the comments below. Also, I wanted just to draw reference to a moment in today's session where Al says to me, "Is that your answer to everything?" I really appreciate people therapeutically being honest. And for me, it's a real sign of building trust in the therapeutic journey that we can have those conversations. And I really want to invite and encourage any of you that are watching, if you're working with a practitioner or a therapist, be bold, be brave. For therapeutic work to work, we have to be really honest. We have to be open. And it takes courage to be able to do that. So we're going to have a 2-week mid-season break with In Therapy. It's a great opportunity to go and watch back episodes. We've been putting out weekly episodes for a number of months now. So if you've missed episodes, please do check them out. And we're super excited to be back in 3 weeks' time. And we're always looking at how we can develop and improve and make the series better. And there's always big plans coming. Look forward to talking with you in a few